This is channel Xianxia Audio. Please support me a subscription. This is the series I'm Not a Theater God. Chapter 181, A Solo Performance. Chen Ling had at least 7 or 8 stab wounds on his body. And even a bullet hole in his shoulder. His face was covered in blood and exhaustion. And large beads of sweat rolled down his cheeks, dripping onto the barren ground. Wen Xiaolin froze, staring blankly at Chen Ling's unnaturally twisted left hand, a look of shock appearing in his eyes. Your hand. That part couldn't pry open the chains, but it could pry open my hand. Chen Ling smiled palely. But it's fine, I'll go find Dr. Chu. This kind of injury is nothing to him. Wen Xiaolin looked at Chen Ling with a complex gaze. He had also gotten that part before, but he hadn't thought of smashing his own hand to get out. Or rather, he simply hadn't dared to think of it. Yet Chen Ling, upon getting the part, did exactly that. If it meant survival, Wen Xiaolin would have unhesitatingly used the part to smash himself. But he truly hadn't thought that far at the time. It was Chen Ling's courage, or rather, his extremely rational wisdom, that saved both of them from the brink of death. How did we escape just now? Wen Xiaolin couldn't help but ask. We were trapped in a storeroom just now. After coming out of the door, people started hearing the noise and came over. So I rushed towards the route with fewer people. Finally, we escaped through the back door. As Chen Ling spoke, an invisible heart serpent slowly emerged from his brow, coiling around the unsuspecting Wen Xiaolin, seemingly sucking something from him little by little. Wen Xiaolin was stunned for a long while, then nodded. That was truly dangerous. I really owe you a lot this time, Mr. Lin Yan. I was just trying to save myself. Chen Ling looked down at the wounds on his body and said hoarsely, Mr. Wen, let's part ways here. I need to go see Dr. Chu. Wen Xiaolin was about to say he'd go with him, but then he remembered that all of this was because of him. And following Chen Ling might just get him entangled again. After a moment of silence, he spoke with a complex expression. All right, I won't follow you. You saved my life. I'll definitely repay you when I have the chance. Chen Ling waved his hand indifferently and walked away with staggering steps. His brown overcoat, stained red with blood, gradually disappearing at the end of the road. Wen Xiaolin was about to walk in the opposite direction to leave when his peripheral vision suddenly caught sight of where Chen Ling had just stood, a crumpled document bag lying in a pool of blood. Chen Ling must have had it on him, and it got into this state during the chaotic fight. Wen Xiaolin didn't doubt at all why this document bag happened to be there. Nor did he doubt anything Chen Ling had just said. Because the heart serpent was coiled above his head, continuously drawing away his doubts. Wen Xiaolin bent down and picked up the document bag, intending to return it to Chen Ling, but found that Chen Ling was already gone. He was already so severely injured, he probably wouldn't be paying attention to this job application document. He could only pick up the document bag from the blood, carefully wipe off the bloodstains, and return it to Chen Ling next time they met. Just then, a tear appeared at the bottom of the document, and a few pages floated out. Wen Xiaolin looked down and found that most of them were Chen Ling's personal information and resume. But when he picked up the last piece of paper, his brows furrowed unconsciously. It was a photo, a boy of 15 or 16, gentle and delicate. On the back of the photo was a line of unforgettable text. Who stole your heart? Doubt appeared in Wen Xiaolin's eyes. And at the same time, the heart serpent, coiled above his head, opened its mouth wide, and the doubts it had just swallowed flowed back into his mind. Wen Xiaolin stared blankly at the photo in his hand, the doubts in his heart reaching an unprecedented peak. He had never felt this way when pursuing other news. Who was this boy? Why was he in Lin Yan's job application documents? What did stealing a heart mean? Was this related to his hospital interview? Wen Xiaolin wanted to rush forward and stop Chen Ling immediately, but he ultimately restrained himself. Even so, his heart still ached with curiosity. It was very uncomfortable. He shook his head and stumbled towards the other side of the road. After Wen Xiaolin had walked far away, a blood-stained figure slowly stepped over the gravel and returned to the original spot. A biting cold wind brushed through his hair, and the corners of his mouth curved slightly upward. Chen Ling waved his hand casually, and his twisted, broken wrist instantly returned to normal. The bloodstains on his body visibly faded, restoring his original spotless appearance. He stood there calmly, completely unharmed, as if the broken bones and wounds from before were just an illusion. The wailing cold wind swept across the empty wilderness, humming in the unoccupied warehouse. Chen Ling pushed open the warehouse door again and slowly walked inside with his hands in his pockets. Like an elegant actor about to step onto a stage, the roar of the machinery covered the creak of the door and his footsteps. Like an accompanying piece of music. Let me go, let me go. I really am Officer Tan Shin's man. Everything I said is true. Why aren't you listening to me? You can't kill me. I completed the mission for the organization. You can't just abandon me like this. Quote. A Cheng, with a black cloth bag over his head, was chained next to the roaring machinery in the center of the warehouse. The deafening roar of the machines almost burst his eardrums, even when he yelled with effort. His voice was completely drowned out. Chen Ling stopped in front of him, a hint of playfulness flashing in his eyes. He suddenly seized A Cheng's throat with one hand and slammed him heavily against the surface of the machine. A Cheng's roars ceased abruptly. A mask of skin naturally peeled off Chen Ling's face, transforming him into a completely unfamiliar middle-aged man. A cold, hoarse voice spoke. Have you thought it through? Thought what through? A Cheng stammered in reply. What I said is true. If you don't believe me, you can ask Officer Tan Shin. I've already sent people to ask. They didn't receive your item. A Cheng froze for a moment. No, that's impossible. At the same time, layers of skin kept peeling off Chen Ling's face, like mysterious and false masks, and completely different voices successively sounded. Boss, he's lying. He's not Tan Shin's man at all. Yeah, he's just struggling to survive. Maybe that location he gave is even fake. Boss, the reporter and the other person have already been killed, completely eliminating future troubles. What about this one? Does that even need asking? Why keep him? Quote. Under the roaring machinery, A Cheng couldn't distinguish the location of these voices. Amidst the murderous voices of everyone, his body trembled slightly in fear. Chapter 182 Wen Shilan's Dilemma. No, I'm not lying. A Cheng struggled wildly against the chains. Everything I said is true. Chen Ling clutched A Cheng's neck, his fingers gradually tightening, as if he intended to choke him to death right there. At the same time, that chilling voice resounded again. How do you prove it? A Cheng's voice was choked and intermittent. In the hidden compartment of my desk drawer at the newspaper office. I also hand-copied a backup. The original. I really did place it at the designated drop-off point. I don't know anything else. Chen Ling's eyebrows lifted slightly. He certainly didn't know anything about an original, nor did he know where the drop-off point A Cheng spoke of was. But that was no longer important. If that Tan Xen had truly sent someone to retrieve it, the original would have likely been taken already. However, the fact that A Cheng himself hand-copied a backup and kept it in his desk at the newspaper office was quite intriguing. It seemed this kid wasn't so loyal to the power behind him. Indeed, if he were truly loyal, he wouldn't have confessed so readily. Having obtained the location of the backup, Chen Ling relaxed slightly and spoke unhurriedly. What is the Hand of Salvation plan? Chen Ling didn't know what the Hand of Salvation plan was, but judging from Wen Shilan's reaction, it seemed to be a highly confidential piece of information. The moment he heard this question, A Cheng froze. Then, as if realizing something, he spoke in astonishment. No, that's not right. You're not one of Tan Shin's men. Who exactly are you? A Cheng's heart instantly sank to the bottom. He never expected the other party to disguise themselves as Tan Shin's people to trick him. No wonder they said they hadn't found the original, and he had indeed fallen for it, even exposing the backup he had kept. At this moment, he knew he was finished. But he still didn't understand. Which force would do such a thing? Who would be interested in the Hand of Salvation? Does it matter? Chen Ling sneered. You have no other choice now. Either speak, or die. Since he knew A Cheng was not completely loyal, and Chen Ling indeed didn't want to play word games with him anymore, he simply laid his cards on the table, pressing the muzzle of the gun against A Cheng's forehead. A Cheng's face beneath the sack was pale. He gritted his teeth and struggled for a long time before speaking with difficulty. I don't know. Chen Ling's eyes narrowed slightly, just as he was about to pull the trigger. A Cheng continued. The confidentiality level of this plan is simply too high. It's said that even among the enforcement officer's high-ranking officials, no more than 5 people are authorized to know about this plan. I was just an undercover agent sent to lie in wait by Wen Shilan's side. How could I possibly know the specific contents of this plan? According to you, if the Hand of Salvation plan is so high level, how did Wen Xiaolin, a reporter, know about it? I'm not clear on the specific details, I hadn't yet infiltrated his side at that time. He spent several months investigating this plan, and he was interrupted many times along the way. He only found some fragmented clues, all of which are in those few articles. What I remember most clearly is that the Hand of Salvation is suspected to be related to the fate of all humanity in the Aurora domain. It will bring us salvation. I only got the article yesterday, and that's all I know. I really don't know anything else. Cheng's tone was incredibly sincere. Ever since he realized Chen Ling wasn't Tan Shen's person, his tone had clearly become extremely humble. He knew that his life and death were no longer in his own hands, or in the hands of the power behind him. Related to the fate of all humanity in the Aurora domain? Hearing this, Chen Ling's heart stirred. Could it be the Aurora Lord? Or is it related to the frozen sea disasters outside the city? Or does Aurora City hide some trump card? Chen Ling tried to intimidate him in various ways a few more times. But Cheng still couldn't provide any more useful clues. He knew that asking further would yield no results, so he gave up on the interrogation. He looked at Cheng, who was still struggling desperately under the black bag, and gently pulled the trigger. A minute later, the hum of the machines in the factory slowly ceased. Chen Ling pushed open the silent factory door, and a cold wind dispersed the faint scent of blood inside the factory. This Wen Xiaolin is indeed quite interesting. He chuckled as if he had thought of something, and his figure gradually disappeared into the wilderness. Wen Xiaolin couldn't sleep. In the cramped 10-square-meter room, he tossed and turned on the bed. Every time he closed his eyes, Chen Ling's calm and silent face appeared in his mind, and all he heard was the whistling of fists tearing through the air. Wen Xiaolin didn't know what was wrong with him. The last time he experienced something like this was when he was in school, experiencing his first crush, and met a girl he shouldn't have met. But this time it was a man. He certainly knew he didn't have such strange preferences, but Chen Ling had left too deep an impression on him. It was past 3 in the morning, and Wen Xiaolin still couldn't sleep. He simply got up and sat at the small table, lit the kerosene lamp in the corner, and prepared to record his experiences from the day. But he was always absent-minded, unconsciously drifting off during the recording process. With several intermittent breaks, Wen Xiaolin was silent for a long time, then sighed and took out the photo from the document bag. The dim candlelight illuminated the phrase, "Who stole your heart?" Upon closer inspection, every stroke of the brush exuded hatred. Shocking to behold. This thing seemed to be one of the sources of his distraction. Wen Xiaolin turned the photo over and stared blankly at the unfamiliar young face at the table. After an unknown amount of time, he took out a blank piece of paper and copied down the sentence on the back of the photo. Then, his thoughts began to extend, connecting one question-marked phrase after another. The most prominent among them were words like heart, organ, hospital, and organ trafficking. For some reason, Wen Xiaolin's desire for knowledge about this matter almost exploded. He immersed himself in speculating on all the meanings of this sentence. And by the time he came back to his senses, the sky outside had already brightened. Wen Xiaolin sat blankly at the table, looking at the rising sun in the corner, feeling only an emptiness in his heart. His peripheral vision fell on the document bag containing the job application information. A strong impulse surged through him. He inexplicably put the photo back into the document bag, then hurriedly put on his clothes and rushed out the door, facing the morning sun. He wanted to see Chen Ling again. There were some things he absolutely had to ask. He knew that Chen Ling might not want to see him at the moment, but the forgotten document bag was a very good excuse. As for how to find Chen Ling, unintentionally, Chen Ling had already provided the answer. He would go to Dr. Chu to treat his wounds, and given his injuries, he probably wouldn't be able to leave that clinic for a while. So, as long as he went to Dr. Chu's clinic, he would definitely be able to find Chen Ling. Chapter 183, Taking the Bait. Morning. Chen Ling sat down on a stone chair in the courtyard. He naturally took the newspaper Chu Muyan was reading and casually flipped through it. Chu Muyan looked at him empty-handed, and helplessly said, "Can't you buy your own? I don't have any money on me." As Chen Ling spoke, his gaze swept over every article. After 2 days, there was less and less news in the newspaper about him and the train entering Aurora City. Most of the pages were entertainment articles, such as a famous female singer being exposed as a mistress kept by another business owner, or a widening conflict between teachers and students at a certain middle school, leading to parental dissatisfaction. Chen Ling flipped for more than 10 seconds, but didn't see any useful news, so he could only put it back on the table. Without Wen Xiaolin, this newspaper really wasn't worth reading. Do you need me to lend you some? Chu Muyan thought for a moment. Without money, some things are indeed difficult to handle. No need, someone will be sending me my salary soon. Hearing this, Chu Muyan was slightly startled. He asked in surprise, sending you your salary? Have you found a job? You didn't really become a reporter, did you? It had only been 2 days since Chen Ling entered Aurora City, and the idea of being a reporter had only come to him yesterday morning. In one day, one couldn't even submit a resume to a newspaper. Not yet, Chen Ling glanced at the time. But he should be here soon. Who? Wen Xiaolin. Wen Xiaolin? That stubborn reporter? Chu Muyan couldn't help but ask. In one day, what kind of spell did you cast on him? Chen Ling smiled without speaking. Knock, knock, knock. A slightly hurried knocking sound came from the door. Chen Ling and Chu Muyan looked at the door at the same time, then exchanged glances. Chu Muyan's expression was a little strange. Don't tell me he's here now. Don't believe it? Wanna bet? Bet what? 1 gold coin. Alright, deal. Chu Muyan got up and walked to the door. He didn't rush to open it, but calmly asked, who is it? Hello, Dr. Chu. I am Wen Xiaolin, a reporter from the Aurora Daily. Hearing this, Chu Muyan knew his money was gone, but he still didn't understand how Chen Ling made Wen Xiaolin so eager. A reporter? Chu Muyan paused for a moment. I don't recall having an appointment with a reporter today, and it's a bit too early right now. I'm very sorry, but I'm here for your caretaker, Lin Yan. He left some things with me, and I wanted to give them to him in person. Lin Yan. The moment this name was mentioned, Chu Muyan seemed to recall something and looked back at Chen Ling. Alright, come in. Chu Muyan opened the door, only to see a plainly dressed reporter standing outside, with a document bag tucked under his arm. His heavy dark circles looked like a panda's, but his eyes were exceptionally bright, and he looked unusually excited. Nice to meet you, Dr. Chu. Wen Xiaolin extended his hand proactively. Chu Muyan politely shook it. He turned his head and said, he's right there, you can go directly, Before he finished speaking, Chu Muyan froze in place. Chen Ling, who had been leisurely reading the newspaper a second ago, was now weakly sitting there, bandaged all over, with a cast on his hand. A desolate cold wind swept through the courtyard, and his haggard figure stared blankly at the distant rockery, his eyes filled with melancholy and sadness. The corner of Chu Muyan's mouth twitched slightly. He didn't know what act Chen Ling was putting on. On the other hand, Wen Xiaolin, seeing this scene, a flash of sympathy and guilt crossed his eyes. He stood silently at the door for a long time, then walked directly towards Chen Ling. Lin Yan. Wen Xiaolin softly called out to the statue-like figure lost in thought. Chen Ling's body trembled. He turned his head and saw Wen Xiaolin, a hint of surprise flashing across his face. Mr. Wen, why are you here? I came to give you something. Wen Xiaolin placed the document bag on the table. You left in too much of a hurry yesterday. I picked it up for you. But it must have been too chaotic when you escaped. So this thing is a bit damaged. I checked it, and all the crucial documents are still there. Chen Ling's expression was somewhat complex, and he nodded slightly. All right, thank you. After speaking, he withdrew his gaze and sat there in silent contemplation, seemingly unwilling to bother with Wen Xiaolin further. The courtyard suddenly fell into an eerie silence. Chu Muyan leaned against the doorway, pushing up his glasses. Although he didn't understand what was happening between the two, it didn't stop him from being a spectator. His eyes were full of curiosity and amusement. Finally, Wen Xiaolin couldn't hold back. He sat down on the stone chair in front of Chen Ling, and after a moment of contemplation. Lin Yan, the young man in that photo. Who is he? Chen Ling's pupils constricted slightly. He suddenly turned his head to look at Wen Xiaolin. Don't misunderstand, Wen Xiaolin immediately said. There was damage at the bottom of the document bag, and that photo just floated out. If I've offended you, you don't have to say anything. But you know, I'm a reporter, and maybe I can help you. Although Wen Xiaolin said, you cannot say, with his mouth. His face almost screamed, "I want to know," in 4 words. His sitting body leaned slightly forward, waiting earnestly for Chen Ling's answer. Chen Ling stared at him for a long time. His expression relaxed slightly, and after some hesitation, he slowly began to speak. "He is my younger brother." Younger brother. Wen Xiaolin nodded. He had guessed this possibility last night. "But you two don't look very alike?" "He's not my biological younger brother." A look of recollection appeared in Chen Ling's eyes. "Back then, Dr. Chu and I went on a medical tour to the 7 districts for free clinics. And we saved a child from the 2nd district. That child had a pitiful background but was extremely sensible. Seeing him without anyone to rely on, I took him in for a while. Later, when the free clinic ended, Dr. Chu and I returned to Aurora City. That child didn't have the proper identification to enter the city. So we left him some money and told him to live well. That child and I were very compatible. And we often corresponded afterward. He recognized me as his older brother. So he naturally became my younger brother." Wen Xiaolin looked back at Chu Muyan in confusion. Chu Muyan didn't expect to get dragged into the gossip. He silently pushed up his glasses. Yes, he was a good child. Wen Xiaolin continued to ask, "Then what does the sentence on the back mean?" His heart was taken away. Chen Ling seemed to recall a painful memory. "About half a year ago, my younger brother went missing. I was not in good health at the time and didn't have time to leave the city. So I entrusted Dr. Chu to go to the 2nd district to check. But only his body was found." "His body had no heart?" Wen Xiaolin immediately said, "That must be organ trafficking? I've interviewed residents of the 3rd district, and the law enforcement in the 7 districts is extremely lax. There are many such cases. And the 3rd district is considered good. The 2nd district seems to have a place called Bingchen Street, where this is very rampant." Chapter 184, Cooperation. Wen Xiaolin proactively brought up Bingchen Street, which was exactly what Chen Ling wanted. The young man in the photo was actually a stranger Chen Ling had disguised himself as and photographed. Not Chen Yan at the time. After all, if the survivors in the 3rd district saw Chen Yan's photo, they could easily connect it to him. He only needed to convey the key information. And the most important clue was Bingchen Street. Yes, I only heard about these things later. According to Dr. Chu, when he found my brother, not only his heart, but he. Chen Ling's face gradually paled. He clenched his fists uncontrollably, seemingly too pained to continue speaking. Chu Muyan caught Chen Ling's gaze and cooperatively continued. Not only his heart, but all of that child's valuable organs were taken. His entire body was empty. To do such a thing to a child is utterly inhumane. Wen Xiaolin fell silent. Chen Ling, sitting opposite him, could see that an uncontrollable rage flickered in Wen Xiaolin's eyes. He seemed to have completely immersed himself in Chen Ling's role, and his breathing became heavy. "No matter who did it, I won't let them go. I swore I would get justice for that child." Chen Ling's eyes glinted with killing intent. "So, you resigned from Dr. Chu?" "Exactly." Chen Ling took several deep breaths, finally calming his emotions, and continued. "I originally wanted to go to the 2nd district to investigate this matter. But before I could even leave, the 7 districts were destroyed. Dr. Chu said that the surgical marks on my brother's body were perfect. And the organ preservation methods were not something the medical standards of the 7 districts could achieve. So it's highly likely his organs circulated within Aurora City. I wanted to personally investigate every hospital in Aurora City, hoping to find some clues." Upon hearing this, Wen Xiaolin basically connected all the dots. The facts were quite similar to his overnight thoughts and conjectures. And at the same time, the image of Lin Yan in his mind quickly became complete. A young man who had learned Sanda, was calm in the face of trouble, and valued loyalty, with a goal he had to achieve no matter what, to bring the enemy who had hollowed out his brother's organs to justice. For this, he was willing to give up the iron rice bowl at Dr. Chu's and face rejection at various hospitals. Wen Xiaolin greatly admired Chen Ling. The last young man he truly admired was a Cheng. Unfortunately, everything about a Cheng was fake, a deception concocted for him. But this time, Wen Xiaolin believed he wouldn't misjudge Lin Yan. "Lin Yan," Wen Xiaolin said seriously, "although your intentions are good, you're going about it the wrong way." Chen Ling was startled. "What do you mean?" "It's understandable that you went to the hospitals to look for your brother's organs. After all, that's where organ transplants are most frequent in Aurora City, and where there's the most demand. But have you ever considered who would be capable of establishing an organ trading channel outside the city and quietly circulating them into the city? Chen Ling frowned slightly. He thought seriously for a moment. Enforcement officers, or people closely connected to them. There was an absolute barrier between Aurora City and the 7 districts. Anyone wanting to enter Aurora City from outside was subject to extremely strict regulations. Let alone goods and organs, unlike industrial raw materials or finished products, require extremely strict conditions for transport. It would be impossible to transport them into Aurora City without passing the enforcement officers. Chen Ling originally had no concept of the situation within Aurora City. But now, with Wen Xiaolan's hint, he immediately realized the key to the problem. Organ transportation on this scale was not something those so-called underworld figures hiding in the shadows could achieve. Wen Xiaolan didn't deny it. He looked deeply at Chen Ling and continued. Early on, I also conducted some investigations in this area. Although all the clues eventually ran dry, I can already roughly guess the forces involved behind it. Behind this industry chain is a behemoth that neither you nor I can contend with. And hospitals are places with many people and many eyes and ears. They would certainly not arrange to dispose of those organs in such a bustling place. No matter how much you look for clues at hospitals, you won't find any results. Chen Ling remained silent, a timely look of confusion appearing in his eyes. Wen Xiaolan was indeed worthy of being a reporter specializing in digging up dirt on Aurora City. His instincts in this area were incredibly sharp, and he possessed a vast amount of intelligence. This was exactly what Chen Ling wanted. Wen Xiaolan's voice rang out again. Lin Yan, if you want to pursue this path, the dangers you'll face may be beyond your imagination. Do you really want to continue investigating? Yes, Chen Ling replied without hesitation. His voice icy cold. No matter who took my brother, I will make them pay. Wen Xiaolan nodded slightly. His groundwork was largely complete. At this moment, he finally stated his ultimate goal. Since that's the case, why don't we cooperate? Cooperate? You've already resigned from your nursing assistant job here with Dr. Chu, and you haven't been hired by other hospitals. Since that's the case, why not just investigate this matter with me? Although our reporter salaries aren't as good as doctors, having this identity will be very convenient for investigations. Plop. A plump carp leapt from the pond in the courtyard, landing itself on the bank. Chu Muyan looked at it with sympathy, sighing deeply. Chen Ling sat there in a daze, seemingly tempted, but still frowned and said, "But you also said this is very dangerous. Mr. Wen, if you investigate with me, wouldn't that drag you into it too? Besides, I can't write articles and I've never been a reporter. This dangerous?" Wen Xiaolan chuckled. At that time, it's hard to say who will drag whom into danger. As for other aspects, you don't need to worry. Whether it's a press pass or other procedures, I'll communicate with the newspaper for you. Chen Ling struggled with his thoughts for a long time, finally making up his mind and nodding heavily. Okay, then we'll do as Mr. Wen says. Wen Xiaolan was overjoyed. He immediately stood up and said, "You wait for me here. I'll go take care of things with the newspaper. At the latest by tomorrow, I'll have your press pass sorted out." He didn't even finish speaking before rushing out the main gate, his figure disappearing at the end of the road in a flash. Chu Muyan stood at the doorway, looking deeply in the direction he had left. He pulled a gold coin from his pocket and tossed it to Chen Ling. "Tisk, is it really okay for you to use him like this?" Chen Ling's plastered hand subtly shifted, instantly returning to normal. He casually caught the thrown gold coin and smiled faintly. Use? No, this is called cooperation. Chapter 185, Under the Lamplight. Darkness. The whimpering cold wind swept over the hill, and in the jungle, a dilapidated doghouse stood isolated. Jian Chongsheng was curled up inside the doghouse, covered by a stained blanket, gnawing fiercely on a piece of bread, his lunch for the day. Thanks to his uncle's help, Jian Chongsheng no longer had to scavenge for food in trash cans. Though he wasn't always full, he at least didn't starve. He wiped the breadcrumbs from the corner of his mouth, meticulously putting each one into his mouth. After taking a few gulps from the water bottle beside him, he let out a long sigh. "I'm alive," Jian Chongsheng murmured, watching his body gradually return to normal. After all, blood clothes is one of the core skills of the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket. Path. After a day of recuperation in the doghouse, Xianxia, who had been on the verge of death, had mostly recovered. His vigorous life force mended the deficiencies in his body, and his skin began to regain its color. Most importantly, after several soul-shattering searches, his mental strength had been honed to a terrifying degree. Unbeknownst to him, he had already broken through the first stage and entered the second stage. From the moment he stepped onto the divine path until now, it had only been a little over 10 days. To achieve such a rapid promotion in such a short period was an astonishing feat. Even in the entire history of Aurora City, Xianxia's confidence, which had been ruthlessly shattered by Chen Ling, finally returned a little. Indeed, he was still a genius, he was just born at the wrong time. Full in content, Xianxia's thoughts became active. He looked at the swaying leaves outside the doghouse, lost in thought. 2 days had passed since he escaped from the Constellation Commerce Association, and those people outside should still be searching for him. Although hiding in the doghouse could minimize their chances of finding him, he couldn't hide forever. Moreover, the mysterious man who rescued him from the dungeon had also said, "Gamble your life, and show us your worth. Perhaps we will give you a new opportunity." That mysterious person had the ability to rescue him from the dungeon. So naturally, he also had the ability to take him away. But the other party didn't do so. Combining this with what he said, Xianxiang roughly guessed that this was all a test specifically for him. Whether he could join the Twilight Society might depend on his actions in the next few days. Xianxiang didn't think the Twilight Society would be interested in a coward who hid in a doghouse for days. Therefore, he had to take action. Xianxiang pondered for a long time, and an idea formed in his mind. He walked out of the doghouse, used the blade at his waist to cut his fingertip, and a drop of crimson blood naturally oozed from the cut. Xianxiang flicked this drop of blood towards a distant rooftop. The blood quickly shot through the air. As Xianxiang formed a hand seal, his figure instantly vanished, appearing the next moment at the location of that drop of blood, landing steadily on the deserted rooftop. Xianxiang looked back. The doghouse was already hundreds of meters away, and the pedestrians on the road showed no signs of noticing anything unusual. After all, no one would look up to notice a drop of blood shooting through the air. The corners of his mouth curved slightly upwards. This was the second skill of the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path that Xianxiang naturally mastered after advancing to the second stage, dripping blood top. Unlike blood clothes, which brought him tenacious vitality, the dripping blood top gave Xianxiang the power of instant movement. With this skill, Xianxiang's already impressive life-saving ability was greatly enhanced, which was his greatest reliance for daring to act during the day. Xianxiang wore a tattered black outfit and had most of his face wrapped in bandages, making his appearance unrecognizable. His figure continuously darted through the air with the blood drops, and soon he arrived on a bustling street. Xianxiang hid in a blind spot on a rooftop, his bandaged gaze fixed on the magnificent building standing not far away. His eyes slightly narrowed. That was the place he had escaped from. His nightmare, the headquarters of the Constellation Commerce Association. Mere escape was meaningless. Xianxiang chose to take the initiative, and with his strength, he certainly couldn't directly confront the vast power of the Constellation Commerce Association. So, he could only temporarily hide here and look for an opportunity. The Constellation Commerce Association members who had been dispatched to find him probably wouldn't have imagined that he would be hiding directly opposite the Constellation Commerce Association, secretly monitoring them. Xianxiang's gaze fell on the figures entering and exiting the Constellation Commerce Association's entrance, and he murmured to himself, "Those few in gray shirts are the Yan family's servants. At this time, they should indeed be going out to purchase ingredients for tonight. Fourth Miss Yan Liuyan just returned. She must have been out all night again, partying with men and getting drunk. Who is that long-haired person? Oh, the vice president of the Silver Moon Merchant Guild? Has the Silver Moon Merchant Guild encountered some difficulties in their business again?" Xianxiang knew these entering and exiting figures like the back of his hand. He had grown up in the Yan family and understood the situation here best. Some people he could tell what they were doing just by looking at them once. Xianxiang patiently hid in the shadows until the sky gradually darkened, remaining motionless. In the evening, the vice president of the Silver Moon Merchant Guild finally left the Constellation Commerce Association. Just as Xianxia thought he would gain nothing today, a stealthy figure silently emerged from the side door of the association. At this time, there were few pedestrians on the street. The figure stuck to the shadows, moving forward as if afraid of being seen by others. Xianxia immediately noticed the anomaly of this person. Just by looking at his back, he couldn't tell who this person was, but he could be sure that this guy was definitely not going out to do anything good. Xianxia's eyes lit up, and he immediately used dripping blood top to follow him. Ellipsis. Ellipsis. At night, a series of urgent knocks echoed in the courtyard. Chu Muyan raised an eyebrow, looking at Chen Ling in surprise. It's only been a few hours. Is Wen Xiaolan's efficiency that high? I don't know. Chen Ling got up and walked towards the main gate. Last night, Wen Xiaolan said he would help him with the reporter's pass. So Chen Ling did nothing all day but quietly read and rest in the courtyard. He didn't expect someone to knock on the door just as the sun set. Chen Ling opened the door and was slightly stunned to see who was outside. It wasn't Wen Xiaolan who came, but the gang leader whom Chen Ling had hired earlier. Seeing Chen Ling actually emerge from this mansion, the gang leader was also stunned for a moment, and his gaze towards Chen Ling grew even more fervent. Chen Ling had given them his address before for easy contact, and the gang leader, finding a large mansion at the address, had doubted himself for a long time. In his impression, Chen Ling didn't seem very rich, even needing to pay the hiring fee at the end. What happened? Chen Ling asked, puzzled. Boss. The gang leader's expression became serious. We found something. Chapter 186, Crematorium. Seeing this, Chen Ling walked straight out of the courtyard, and the two quickly headed towards the distant street. Wen Xiaolan also knew that he lived here. If Wen Xiaolan came over later and saw him associating with this group of gang members who had beaten him up, his persona would probably collapse. What did you find? Chen Ling asked only after they had walked 2 streets away. You said to investigate the organ trafficking. We thought about it carefully and felt that it should be related to hospitals. So we sent our brothers to stake out various hospitals in the city. Hearing this, Chen Ling's expression became a bit strange. It seemed not everyone was Wen Xiaolan, possessing such a keen journalistic sense. These gang members made the same mistake as him, targeting hospitals as their primary objective. Then what? We staked out the hospital for 2 days, practically searching every corner, but still found nothing. However, something strange happened tonight. The gang leader looked around, and only after confirming no one was present, did he slowly begin to speak. One of our brothers was responsible for staking out the back door. In the middle of the night, he saw a few doctors come out with a stretcher, looking very nervous. This brother felt that something was wrong, so he stealthily followed them and saw a car parked outside the hospital. Beside the car were a few people dressed in black, mysteriously opening the trunk, intending to put the person on the stretcher inside. Just then, a gust of wind blew, and the white sheet on the stretcher flew off. Guess what? The gang leader lowered his voice. That stretcher held a corpse, and it was full of incisions. The entire person was hollowed out like a pile of mud, rotten mud. Chen Ling's pupils suddenly contracted. Are you sure you didn't see it wrong? Chen Ling immediately retorted. No mistake. That brother guaranteed it with his life. The gang leader continued. According to him, when the doctors saw the person on the stretcher, their faces turned pale on the spot. The black-clothed people hastily wrapped the person in something, stuffed them in, and then drove away. Does the corpse have any distinguishing features? The detailed features are unclear, as it was a bit dark at the time, but it was reportedly a youth, around 16 or 17 years old. Youth. Chen Ling's mind immediately conjured Chen Yan's appearance. He knew that the person the gang leader spoke of couldn't be Chen Yan. But from the description, the conditions and experiences of these 2 victims were too similar. If nothing else, it should be the work of the same force. But he didn't understand. Logically, these people shouldn't be acting so openly in a hospital. Moreover, judging by the doctors' reactions, it didn't seem like they did this kind of thing often. Could it be that after the fall of the 7 districts, with no safe and stable source of organs, they were forced to take risks within Aurora City? The more Chen Ling thought about it, the more he felt this was possible. He immediately asked, where did that car go in the end? Our brothers are chasing it now. I came to find you first. Let's go. Follow them. Chen Ling set off without hesitation. and the two figures swiftly moved towards a certain direction in the night. Fortunately, vehicles in this era were not driven by internal combustion engines but by steam engines. Coupled with their bulky size, narrow roads, and extremely slow speeds, they were not much faster than running in the intricate road network of Aurora City's core area. Therefore, the gang members could barely keep up. Chen Ling and the gang leader sprinted along the traces they left. But they started too late and still couldn't catch up with the car. After sprinting through a few blocks, the gang leader was already covered in sweat, and his speed gradually slowed down. In contrast, Chen Ling beside him remained calm and composed, showing no signs of exhaustion, which secretly surprised the gang leader. It seemed his boss was no ordinary person either. "Forget it, you run at your own pace." Seeing him struggling, Chen Ling simply said, "I'll go ahead and chase it myself." As his words fell, before the gang leader could put on a brave front, Chen Ling stirred up a howling gust of wind and sped towards the end of the road. The gang leader was immediately dumbfounded. He never expected that his full effort was merely the other party's casual display. Chen Ling followed the marks left by the gang members, moving so fast that he appeared as afterimages. He quickly caught up with the few gang members who had given up midway due to exhaustion, and then continued forward. By the time he left the main urban area, the gang member running in the lead was also sitting by the roadside, panting, having given up the chase. Steam cars were still cars, even if they weren't fast. It was impossible for them to catch up on foot. At this point, their tracking marks completely disappeared. Chen Ling looked at the dim wilderness in the distance and frowned, asking, "Where is this ahead?" "It's the outer ring of the North District," the gang member replied, gasping for breath. "It's very desolate here, hardly anyone lives. Why would that car drive here?" Chen Ling looked at the dim area in the distance, where only a few faint lights flickered. He raised his hand and pointed there. "What is that?" The gang member thought for a moment. "It should be the crematorium?" Hearing the three words, crematorium, Chen Ling was stunned. He seemed to understand something, his expression turning grim, and he immediately approached that direction at full speed. These guys, are they trying to destroy the evidence? If everything was as Chen Ling thought, then this organ theft at the hospital must have put the forces behind it at risk. Aurora City was not the 7 districts, where people could simply be buried in mass grave after death. If the youth's corpse in the hospital was not handled properly, it could very likely be discovered by someone with ulterior motives. Chen Ling had finally found a clue to the organ trafficking, and he couldn't let it be burned away like this. He swept past like a strong wind, and no one in the dim wilderness noticed his presence. As the crematorium drew closer, Chen Ling could already see the car parked in the open space. But no one was inside. At this hour, the crematorium was already closed for business. Except for a few rooms that were still lit, the other areas were empty. Chen Ling agilely flipped over the iron gate, landing silently inside the crematorium, and ghost-like, he crept towards the lit rooms. Almost simultaneously, on the other side of the crematorium wall, a drop of blood silently arced through the air. That drop of blood landed precisely in the corner of the crematorium. And just as it was about to touch the ground, it transformed into a figure dressed in black with bandages wrapped around his face. Crematorium. Jian Chongsheng's eyes beneath his hood narrowed slightly. What are they doing here at this hour? Chapter 187, The Incinerator. Jian Chongsheng's figure flickered, and he instantly appeared behind the window in the southwest corner, hiding completely in the shadows, looking into the room. At this moment, only a few scattered lights were on in the room. Under the dim light, 3 or 4 figures were gathered together, carrying a corpse wrapped in a white sheet, whispering to each other. As one figure pushed the door open and entered the room, these people immediately fell silent, bowing their heads respectfully. Brother Chen. The person who entered the room was precisely the figure Jian Chongsheng had been tracking. The one who came out of the Constellation Commerce Association. Brother Chen's gaze fell on the white sheet on everyone's shoulders, and he spoke in a deep voice. How is it? No one discovered it, right? The few people exchanged glances, no one answering. Seeing their reaction, Brother Chen's face immediately turned ugly. What do you mean by not speaking? Brother Chen, when we were at the hospital, no one should have discovered us. But on the way, it seemed like someone was chasing the car. One figure stammered. However, we finally shook them off. And no one knows we came here. Chasing the car? Brother Chen was stunned for a moment. then roared in anger. What are you good for? I told you to dispose of a corpse. And you let yourselves be followed? Do you have no anti-tracking awareness at all? A bunch of idiots. Brother Chen's angry shouts echoed in the room. Xianxia, outside the window, couldn't help but roll his eyes, thinking to himself. He was also tracked the whole way without even noticing. So isn't he even worse than an idiot? Brother Chen, we really don't know where they came from. At the hospital, we cleared the area and specifically chose deserted places to load the goods. Could it be that the hospital leaked the news? They? Brother Chen quickly caught the key point. The ones chasing you. There was more than one person? It seemed like more than one. It was too dark to see clearly, but their stamina couldn't keep up with the car. And they all disappeared after running for a while. Brother Chen's brows immediately furrowed. He suddenly felt that this matter was a bit strange. Even if the hospital had leaked the news and someone was staking them out, they shouldn't have dispatched so many people all at once. And on foot chasing a car. Not to mention whether they could catch up. Such a large group of people would be too conspicuous. But if it wasn't a deliberate ambush, would anyone be so idle as to form a group to chase a car in the middle of the night? Brother Chen was utterly perplexed. He frowned and pondered for a moment. Still feeling uneasy, he quickly walked to the door and peered outside, seemingly confirming whether anyone had chased them here. However, before he stepped out the door, Chen Ling, outside the door, raised an eyebrow and quietly retreated half a step, completely hiding his figure in the shadows of the corner. At the same time, Xianxia, hiding outside the window on the other side, also quickly flicked out a drop of fresh blood, instantly teleporting to the rooftop. Brother Chen cautiously looked around, and after confirming that no one had followed them here, he turned and went back into the room. Has the hospital been dealt with cleanly? All the organs have been transferred, and the relevant doctors have been given enough hush money. As for this young man, the person paused, then continued. He wasn't actually a patient in that hospital. His mother was seriously ill and hospitalized. And he came to take care of her. Tonight, our doctor tricked him into undergoing a heart transplant, to give his own heart to his mother. And he agreed. Because he was a caregiver, not a hospital patient, no records would be left. As for his mother, we also swapped her medication, causing her to die from her illness. In terms of social connections, this mother and son had no close relatives or friends. And a few days ago, our people upgraded them to a private room, isolating them from other patients. This way, 2 other patients, the mother died of illness, and the child probably left the hospital, so no suspicions will arise. Hearing this, Brother Chen's expression finally softened a little. Well done. Outside the door, Chen Ling's face gradually darkened. From the current situation, things were pretty much as he had guessed. These people secretly transported this corpse to the crematorium, also intending to destroy the evidence. However, when he heard the phrase, tricked him into undergoing a heart transplant, it felt like a thorn had been jabbed into his heart, and a surge of anger immediately welled up. These people's way of doing things really hasn't changed. Haha. Organ trafficking. Ha, Xianxia on the rooftop pondered. The Constellation Commerce Association, secretly doing this kind of business? That shouldn't be right. They shouldn't be short on money. Even Xianxia, who grew up in the Yan family, had never heard of organ trafficking. Of course, this might also be because he was just an insignificant small fry. How could a lame subordinate like him know about such confidential matters? However, Xianxia's eyes also gradually lit up. He felt that this might be a good way to get revenge on the Constellation Commerce Association. Inside the room, Brother Chen looked at the time and spoke coldly. It's getting late. Quickly dispose of the body, lest there be complications. The few people immediately nodded. They fumbled to open the incinerator for bodies. Blazing flames ignited inside the furnace. The scorching high temperature was enough to turn all flesh into ash. This crematorium, silent in the night, thus began to operate quietly. Chen Ling knew he couldn't wait any longer. The corpse they were about to push into the incinerator was the only clue and evidence at the moment. And he would never allow them to destroy it. However, before Chen Ling could make a move, a drop of fresh blood shot in from outside the window. That drop of blood streaked through the air, accurately landing in front of the people who were about to throw the corpse into the incinerator. The next moment, a black-clad figure appeared out of thin air. The few people carrying the corpse were stunned for a moment. Before they could react, the person had already grabbed the corpse wrapped in the white sheet with one hand. and with a sidekick, sent one of them flying. The terrifying force made him soar several meters before he crashed heavily to the ground. Just that one kick caused the person's chest to be deeply caved in. And broken ribs pierced his heart. It looked like he wouldn't survive. The other two turned pale with fright. As they were about to make a move, the black-clad figure's fist whistled towards their faces, directly knocking them dizzy. Then, grabbing their collars, he threw them one after another into the incinerator behind him like little chicks. The blazing flames roasted the two living bodies. Piercing screams instantly erupted, then quickly faded. In the inferno that seemed to burn everything, their sins and wickedness seemed to become shackles nailing down their souls. Their bodies falling into a fiery purgatory. In front of the incinerator, a black-clad figure, carrying the white sheet, slowly raised his head. A face wrapped in bandages, under the flickering firelight, looked like a vengeful demon emerging from the flames. Chapter 188, Shura vs. Shura. Chen Ling looked at the bandaged face, his brows furrowing unconsciously. The shadowy figure appeared too abruptly. Even Chen Ling didn't see how he appeared. However, the opponent immediately kicked one person to death and threw two into the incinerator. A ruthless method not possessed by ordinary people. Who is he? The other party was clearly not with this group of people, and judging by his methods, he might even have a grudge against them. Was his target also the hollowed-out corpse? Who are you? Brother Chen was shocked to see three of his subordinates killed instantly. Me? Jian Chongsheng sneered. I am a vengeful ghost come to seek retribution from you. As his words fell, Jian Chongsheng transformed into an afterimage and shot out. His fist broke through the air with a booming sound, carrying terrifying force as it smashed towards Brother Chen's face. Brother Chen instinctively put his hands up to block, but his entire body was sent flying backward as if hit head-on by a car. A sharp pain shot from his forearm, seemingly broken by the punch. His body slammed heavily against the wall, the recoil sweeping through his internal organs. His vision went black, and his body slumped down like cotton. Jian Chongsheng did not kill him. Instead, he grabbed his belt with one hand, lifting him like trash, and simultaneously carried the corpse wrapped in a white sheet, quickly heading towards the door. He was leaving. Seeing this, a cold glint flashed in Chen Ling's eyes. The next moment, Jian Chongsheng felt a bone-chilling coldness coming from his side. His pupils constricted slightly, and he lunged to the side without hesitation. Whoosh! A blade reflecting moonlight almost grazed his cheek. This sudden killing intent made Jian Chongsheng retreat several steps like a startled bird. A cold sweat breaking out on his back, he instinctively pulled out a short sword from his waist and held it across his chest before looking carefully in the direction he had just come from. The dim light from the window shone onto the wilderness outside the crematorium, where a figure in a brown coat stood quietly on the dividing line between light and shadow. As his face slowly lifted, a black smiling mask entered Jian Chongsheng's vision. The moment he saw that mask, Jian Chongsheng's heart trembled, whether it was the crimson, eerie eyes or the exaggerated smile that reached his ears. It gave him an inexplicable sense of dread. Who exactly is this person? The same question also appeared in Jian Chongsheng's mind. The two figures stood there in front of the crematorium, and the air suddenly fell silent. They were both coldly observing each other, guessing the other's possible identity and allegiance. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +3 close black lens bracket. Are you also with them? Jian Chongsheng asked in a deep voice. No, Chen Ling shook his head. I don't care about their lives. But you'd best give me that corpse. Oh, what if I don't? Then I don't mind turning you into a corpse as well. Jian Chongsheng naturally could not hand over this corpse. It was a crucial tool for him. If necessary, he could even use it to threaten the Constellation Commerce Association. And Chen Ling would not allow critical evidence and clues to be taken away just like that. At this point, any probing or negotiation was meaningless. After a brief silence, both figures charged towards each other simultaneously. Chen Ling had just witnessed Jian Chongsheng's entire attack, knowing that the other party should also be a divine path wielder. So he didn't dare to be careless. He gripped the short knife in a reverse grip and, without hesitation, stabbed himself 3 times. Crimson blood instantly stained the blade, and Chen Ling's speed and strength instantly surged. Jian Chongsheng, charging from the opposite side, was momentarily stunned by this scene. Before he could react, Chen Ling, moving so fast he left an afterimage, was already in front of him, slicing a deep, bone-deep gash into his body. What is going on? Xianxia was dumbfounded. He hadn't expected someone to stab themselves before a fight. Could it be that the other party was also on the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path, becoming stronger the more injured he was? Xianxia snapped out of his daze from the pain. Seeing Chen Ling's second punch coming, he immediately put his hands up to block. However, Chen Ling, already in a severely injured state, clearly had the upper hand in strength, directly sending him flying like a broken kite. As his body landed heavily, dust flew up into the air. Xianxia struggled to his feet, a ruthless glint flashing in his eyes. He also raised the short sword in his hand and forcefully sliced across his waist and abdomen, instantly exposing a bloody wound to the air, from which crimson blood continuously gushed out. Blood clothes? Chen Ling asked in surprise. Seeing this familiar technique, Chen Ling raised an eyebrow. He hadn't expected that after using this move for so long, he would encounter an enemy also belonging to the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path who had learned his technique. But from the wound, the other party seemed even more ruthless than him. Xianxia tightly gripped the blood-stained short sword, his gaze fixed on Chen Ling like a violent beast. He no longer approached Chen Ling by running, but instead swung the short sword from a distance, and the blood beads on the blade were instantly flung out by inertia. When these blood beads approached Chen Ling, he already sensed something was wrong and immediately associated it with the other party's strange, sudden appearance out of nowhere. His body instinctively retreated. He had just retreated a single step when Xianxia's figure instantly flashed to the position of the foremost blood bead. The blood-stained short sword cut through the air, whistling as it stabbed towards Chen Ling's neck. Chen Ling reacted extremely quickly. Driven by the killing rhapsody, the short knife in his hand rapidly clashed with the short sword. Similar force, similar speed, knife and sword collided repeatedly at extremely close range, so fast that they sparked in the night sky. Was that perhaps the second-tier skill of the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path? Chen Ling recalled the scene where the blood beads instantly transformed into Xianxia, and he already had an answer in his mind. After all, not everyone had the ability to learn other skills like him. Since the opponent's first tier was blood clothes, the next skill must also belong to the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path. As the two sides gradually exchanged blows, more and more blood seeped from Xianxia's waist and abdomen. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and in a gap between exchanges, he wiped the short sword against his wound again, coating the blade surface with blood, completely soaking it red. Clang! The short knife and short sword collided again. The next moment, tiny blood beads were shaken off the blade, splashing in all directions. Almost simultaneously, Xianxia, who was directly in front of Chen Ling, instantly vanished. When he reappeared, he was already behind him, and the crimson blade directly pierced into his back, burying itself within. Sharp pain radiated from his back. Chen Ling, under the mask, grunted, and swung his knife backward at Xianxia, but the latter agilely retreated and avoided it. This skill, it can be used like this? This was Chen Ling's first encounter with a second-tier skill of the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path, and he was caught off guard. Still taking a hit, he felt the continuous surge of power from the wound, and his eyes under the mask grew even colder. Chapter 189, Vest and Vest. Feeling Chen Ling's gaze from beneath his mask, Xianxia's heart trembled slightly. This gaze gave him a strangely familiar sense of oppression. But Xianxia quickly suppressed the odd feeling in his heart, gripped the blood-stained short sword, and slashed it forcefully. Dozens of blood drops once again flew overwhelmingly towards Chen Ling. Clang, clang, clang. The continuous clashes of saber and sword produced dense sounds. Xianxia, relying on the terrifying mobility brought by the dripping blood top, forcefully suppressed Chen Ling. His figure was like a bloody specter, appearing and disappearing unpredictably, on a battlefield splattered with countless blood. It was impossible to determine from which direction the next strike would come. So it's just a first tier. Xianxia's mouth beneath the bandage curved slightly upward. Without the dripping blood top, you can't defeat me. On the same path, the higher the tier, the more skills one possesses. For battles below the fourth tier, The number of skills almost determines the outcome of the battle. And this figure wearing a black mask had yet to use the dripping blood top. So he must be a first tier. Chen Ling's eyes narrowed slightly. Although he was fighting while retreating, his footsteps showed no confusion. He quickly retreated to the wilderness outside the crematorium. Is that so? Chen Ling spoke indifferently. His fingertips quickly picked up a branch from the ground, breaking it in half. At the same time, the blood-stained short sword once again pierced towards his chest with astonishing speed. Snap! Xianxia only felt a blur before his eyes. The short sword in his hand instantly turned into half a branch, poking Chen Ling's hard chest and breaking into several pieces from the middle. At the same time, the remaining half of the branch in Chen Ling's hand transformed into that short sword, tightly gripped in his hand. Xianxia froze in place. Now, can you still dodge? The next moment, a cold gleam, like a crescent moon, instantly flashed past. The sharp blade cut across Xianxia's throat, as if to directly decapitate him. Without the short sword, Xianxia couldn't rely on the vibrating blood drops to reposition himself during combat. Fortunately, Xianxia reacted quickly, leaning back slightly in time, thus avoiding instant death. Even so, scarlet blood still gushed uncontrollably from the severed blood vessels, instantly staining a large pool of blood on the ground. But Chen Ling's offensive did not stop there. After striking with the saber, his body naturally arched slightly. Continuous power gathered from the wounds all over his body, and a howling sidekick broke through the air with a sharp bang, heavily striking Xianxia's chest. Xianxia's chest instantly caved in as if struck by a meteor. He flew backward for more than 10 meters, breaking several tree trunks before falling into a cloud of dust. Chen Ling wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, holding the saber in one hand and the sword in the other, and walked slowly towards that direction. Previously, Xianxia had suppressed him for a long time with his abnormal dripping blood top. Chen Ling finally found an opportunity to counterattack using Scarlet Trick, and this counterattack was enough to turn the tide of the battle. That decapitating strike and the powerful kick, even a third tier couldn't withstand them. However, things were still somewhat beyond Chen Ling's expectations. When he saw a blood-soaked figure struggling to stand up from the pool of blood, Chen Ling's expression beneath his mask turned somewhat grim. Tisk, so hard to kill. The last time Chen Ling found someone hard to kill was Xianxia, whom he met in the Bingdao Ancient Treasury, and this one in front of him seemed even harder to kill than Xianxia back then. And at this moment, Xianxia was also a bit stunned. Chen Ling's substitution trick just now had left him reeling. He didn't understand. They were both on the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path, so why did Chen Ling have such strange skills? Was his Asura false, or was the other party's Asura false? Speaking of which, he had encountered an opponent with very chaotic and strange skills before. At this moment, Xianxia, who prided himself as a genius, once again recalled the fear of being dominated by Chen Ling. Xianxia shook his head, temporarily casting these fears aside. He was now in a dying state, which was when blood clothes could be utilized to its fullest. If he dragged it on any longer, he might actually fall here. Xianxia took a deep breath, stomping his foot forcefully in the pool of blood, sending blood splattering everywhere. In the dim dense forest, Chen Ling immediately felt successive gusts of fists sweeping in from all directions. This time, he chose not to meet them head-on, but instead relied on the terrifying perception of Secret Eye to frantically dodge Xianxia's attacks. Although both had blood clothes, Xianxia was more severely injured now, and both his speed and strength far exceeded Chen Ling's. If Chen Ling were to be touched by those fists, he would probably be beaten into a dying state, but Chen Ling didn't want to risk his life here. Chen Ling's eyes narrowed slightly, seeing that he was about to be forced into a corner by that fist. He lightly clapped his hands in front of his chest. As the crisp sound of clapping echoed, Chen Ling and Xianxia's eyes suddenly transformed into countless red butterflies fluttering, scattering amidst the swirling wind of his fists. Xianxia missed. As he looked around in confusion, a sharp stinging pain came from his cheek. Unbeknownst to him, Chen Ling had already ghost-like flashed to his side, his short saber cutting open his cheek and simultaneously severing the bandage wrapped around his face, sending blood-stained fragments fluttering to the ground. Xianxia's heart was startled. Then anger and ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. He did not choose to cover his face, but instead reached back to grab Chen Ling's black mask. Snap! Even though Chen Ling had tried his best to retreat and avoid it, the fierce punch still shattered the mask, exposing both faces simultaneously under the dim moonlight as they continuously retreated. The moment he saw Jian Chongsheng's appearance, Chen Ling froze in place. Chen Ling certainly recognized that face, but Jian Chongsheng should have died in the Bingdao ancient treasury. At that time, he had directly annihilated the other party's heart with the Court of Judgment, and then specifically confirmed that there was no life force. The person was already stiff, so how could he still be alive and standing here now? Chen Ling was incredibly shocked, but at the same time, the confusion that had plagued him for a long time was also resolved. No wonder his identity was exposed so quickly back then. It turned out that a fish had slipped through the net and returned to Aurora City. On the other hand, Jian Chongsheng, seeing the new face belonging to Lin Yan, breathed a slight sigh of relief. Good, it wasn't that red-clothed Chen Ling behind the mask. When he was fighting this mysterious person just now, the pressure the other party brought him gave him a strange sense of familiarity. He even truly thought that this person in front of him might be Chen Ling wearing a mask. Because in his perception, only that bizarre guy could possess multiple strange skills. But now it seemed he had overthought it. How could Jian Chongsheng, whose disguise had already been revealed, have imagined that beneath the other party's seemingly thin mask, there was actually another disguised vest? Seeing Chen Ling still intending to strike, Jian Chongsheng suddenly spoke. Wait. Chapter 190. Sharing. Chen Ling raised an eyebrow and stopped. Brother, since you're not from the Constellation Commerce Association, why do you insist on opposing me? Jian Chongsheng asked, his face pale. After these few exchanges, Jian Chongsheng had figured it out. This mysterious person in front of him was very strong. And even if he entered a near-death state, he could only fight him to a draw. If the other party also entered a near-death state, with the enhancement of the blood clothes, he might not be his opponent. Moreover, Jian Chongsheng was seriously injured. If he continued to fight like this, he would likely lose his ability to move and be at the mercy of others. Jian Chongsheng's seemingly casual remark, in Chen Ling's ears, contained a lot of information. Constellation Commerce Association. So those people in the room were from the Constellation Commerce Association? Although Chen Ling had followed the trail all the way, he didn't actually know which faction the people in the car belonged to. But now Jian Chongsheng had given him an answer. However, what surprised him was that Jian Chongsheng should also be from the Constellation Commerce Association. So why did he now seem to have a deep-seated hatred for them? After a careful thought, Chen Ling had the answer in his mind. Jian Chongsheng had killed Yan Shikai once, which should mean he had completely fallen out with the Constellation Commerce Association. I said, I don't care about other things. Chen Ling replied calmly, I only want that corpse. Seeing this, Jian Chongsheng hesitated for a long time, then gritted his teeth. All right, the corpse is yours, but that living person must be left to me. Besides the corpse, Jian Chongsheng had deliberately held back earlier and didn't kill the man referred to as Brother Chen. He was from the Constellation Commerce Association and seemed to be the leader of this corpse disposal operation. He should be able to extract a lot of useful information from him. This was the biggest concession Jian Chongsheng could make. He couldn't have tracked them all this way, taken a beating, and then returned empty-handed. Chen Ling was about to refuse, because for him, that living person had the same value. But he had a change of mind and then spoke. The corpse is mine. As for that living person, we can share him. Share him? Confusion appeared in Jian Chongsheng's eyes. You want that living person? Nothing more than to extract information from his mouth. If that's the case, our goals don't conflict. Chen Ling said unhurriedly. We can find a place and take turns interrogating him. What do you think? Jian Chongsheng frowned and thought. Given their current situation, continuing to fight would definitely be the worst outcome, and sharing the living person could indeed satisfy both their goals. Jian Chongsheng had also considered whether to take the living person back separately for a few days of interrogation and then return him for the other to interrogate. But that way, not only would they distrust each other, but most importantly, Jian Chongsheng didn't want the fact that he lived in a dog kennel to be exposed. After thinking it over, this proposal was indeed the best solution at the moment. All right, but I'll choose the location. ... About 10 minutes later, Xianxia, carrying brother Chen like a dead pig, walked deep into the dense forest. Chen Ling followed closely, hands in his pockets, his gaze sweeping over the dim, eerie forest around him, his eyes slightly narrowed. This is the place you mentioned? An open-air forest? Yes. For Xianxia, finding a place in the city to interrogate brother Chen was too dangerous. He had to find an absolutely deserted and open area, convenient for him to use the dripping blood top to escape at any time. As he still couldn't completely trust Chen Ling. Once the skill effect of his blood clothes wore off, he would become very weak. If Chen Ling were to suddenly attack while he was focused on the interrogation, his life would be in danger. Chen Ling had no objection to this. Compared to these, he was more curious about what had happened to Xianxia. He trailed far behind Xianxia, his gaze constantly sweeping over him, and a faint light flickered in his narrowed eyes. This Xianxia was killed once by him in the Bingdao ancient treasury. So he must harbor resentment towards him. If he ever found out his true identity, it would likely be very troublesome. How about, while he is weak and powerless now, kill him again? Killing him would not only avenge the exposure of his identity in Aurora City, but also allow him to monopolize the living person, with all benefits and no harm. Chen Ling rubbed his chin with one hand, carefully calculating the possibility of killing the other party in his mind. Just then, Xianxia stopped. Let's do it here. Xianxia threw brother Chen onto the ground like trash, not even bothering to tie him up, as if he wasn't afraid of him escaping if he woke up. He looked back at Chen Ling. You first or me first? You go first. Chen Ling politely yielded. As he spoke, Chen Ling walked to a nearby tree, sat down on the ground, and squinted his eyes as if about to fall asleep. Seeing this, Xianxia didn't waste any words and directly slapped the unconscious brother Chen in the face, producing a crisp sound. Slap. Brother Chen, who had been like a corpse, was slapped several times, directly hitting the tree trunk behind him. He opened his eyes in terror, spitting out several bloody broken teeth. Cough, 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 cough. Brother Chen only felt his vision darken, and the next moment, a strong hand grabbed him by the collar, lifting his entire body into the air. I thought it was someone else. Isn't this our brother Lu Chen? In the dim moonlight, Xianxia blood-stained face was incomparably ferocious. Seeing this, Lu Chen was visibly stunned. He widened his eyes, which were filled with disbelief. What? You don't recognize me? Xianxia said indifferently. I'm Xiao Jian, back in the Yan family. I didn't receive little of your blessings, brother. Xianxia emphasized the words, blessings, and a murderous aura emanated from his words. Lu Chen, of course, recognized Xianxia. He clearly remembered the difficulties he had caused Xianxia back then. And now Xianxia had become a fugitive wanted by the Constellation Commerce Association. This made him somewhat panicked, because he couldn't imagine what this madman, who now hated the Constellation Commerce Association to the core, would do to him. But Lu Chen was, after all, a guy who could single-handedly handle such dirty work for the Constellation Commerce Association in secret. And his mental fortitude was not weak. He quickly suppressed the fear in his heart and spoke expressionlessly. So it's you. It seems your days as a stray dog haven't been good either? The Constellation Commerce Association's pursuit must have made you quite miserable, right? Xianxia expression instantly turned incredibly grim. He backhanded Lu Chen in the lower abdomen, and the terrifying force caused the tree trunk behind him to shake slightly. Lu Chen's face turned pale, and he immediately gagged, scarlet blood dripping from the corner of his mouth, soaking into the ground drop by drop. If you don't let me have a good time, I won't let you have a good time either, Xianxia said chillingly. The pain of 4 soul-shattering searches. I will make every person in the Yan family taste it sooner or later. And you are the first.